Hi, good morning or good
Good,
afternoon.
good evening.
I'm still transitioning my day.
I know.
How are you?
Good yourself?
I'm good, thank you. Are you with your sister? Yes, you
I,
are.
yes, she is with me.
Do you have the materials that you need, or would you like me to go over them?
Yeah, I have the jar, I have the bottle of water, I have my cabbage, and I have another green vegetable, collard green.
Okay, perfect. So I am going to start by welcoming you and then sharing a little bit um, of why culturing vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
Go over a presentation, and then
Mm-hmm.
after the presentation, we're gonna start the recipe.
Okay. I'll send it to you.
Okay. So welcome to Sprout Change. At Sprout Change, we help you reclaim your health using food as medicine, natural remedies, and herbs. I'm going to focus on our workshop material today.
Mm-hmm.
So today we're doing do-it-yourself cultured vegetables to help increase immunity, mitigate stress, support a healthy gut-brain connection.
Okay.
In this workshop, attendees will learn the benefits of cultured vegetables to increase their immunity, mitigate stress, and support a healthy gut, which in turn supports mental health, including optimal brain functioning. Cultured vegetables are truly a superfood rich in living probiotics, vitamins, and minerals that also support the entire body and nervous system. And personally, it's one of my favorite ways of getting a homemade multivitamin. It is especially necessary to consume cultured vegetables on a daily basis to replenish probiotics as well as B vitamins that are wiped out due to chronic stress. So that's something that I learned from the research of Donna Gates, who is a big health advocate when it comes to probiotic living cultured vegetables. And so we have different types of fermentation. Unfortunately, a lot of the fermentation that we see in North America is pasteurized. And what that means is that it's been heated. And when we heat something, Rose, you're nodding your head. What do you think, Rose, happens when we pasteurize things?
Oh, we lose the most of the important nutrient or vitamins.
Exactly. And so a lot of fermented foods in the US, I don't know when, I guess at some point they started at one point they were living, and then we started pasteurizing, and then that became very common. And then we stopped using vinegar with a mother, which is a living type of vinegar. And I, we can discuss the theme of vinegar in a separate conversation because I know some faith groups have a concern because of their dietary restrictions. But there is a difference in cultured foods. The difference between cultured and fermented is that it's still a fermentation.
Mm-hmm.
However, cultured is a living probiotic. And fermentation, you just have vinegar, and sometimes the vinegar has, because of pasteurization or because of distillation process, is just an acid. It's not a living, with living microorganisms that
Mm-hmm.
benefit us, right? And so that's the most like simple explanation I can share with you.
Uh-huh.
So today, attendees will also learn how to culture their own vegetables using an anaerobic fermentation process. And that's also a little bit different from traditional fermentation, because traditional fermentation, like in sauerkraut, European sauerkraut, that version it's fermented through wild yeast. It's open, and so, or you leave the lid a little bit open so that the wild yeast in the air can go into the fermentation. And Donna Gates, Donna Gates and myself are in the school of thought that we really want living probiotics. And so our diets are already really high in yeast. And this is more my hypothesis. We have so much yeast in our diet from simple carbohydrates, from foods that have not been processed slowly, that have not been prepared in a slow method. And when, for instance, fast breads is when you're not, the leavening is something that is a quick leaven, like a 1 hour leaven or a 3 hour leaven, instead of a 2 or 3 day leavening process, right? And that we know as sometimes we might call it a sourdough fermentation, or using a sourdough starter, or using a a wild yeast starter to I'm sorry, I'm losing the word right now. What's the word that I'm looking for? To leaven the bread, right? And to help to break down the gluten in the bread. Because when you're using the starter, the wild yeast that also has beneficial microbes, beneficial microorganisms, those beneficial microorganisms and the wild yeast, they will help break down the gluten and the sugars. And that is technically a pre-digestion. And in that pre-digestion, these microorganisms, these beneficial probiotics, will also create more beneficial probiotics, and that's incredibly healthy for us. And unfortunately, with the modern diet, with the leavening happening so quickly or not happening at all, we have a very hard time of breaking down the gluten. And so we technically don't have an issue with wheat. We technically don't have an issue with gluten. We have an issue with the process. So we also have an issue with the agriculture, right? The pesticides and the lack of living soil. We have an issue with the stopping the not breaking down the gluten and the simple sugars in the wheat germ. And so my goal is that in this lecture today, we will incorporate some of the best practices in culturing vegetables and start incorporating more living foods and more probiotic rich foods into our diet. And this goes into a little bit of what I was sharing earlier. Traditional fermented vegetables use an aerobic fermentation process, which involves wild yeast in the air. Since Western diets are very high in yeast, SproutChange believes that consuming anaerobically fermented foods supports a more balanced gut flora. The great thing about cultured vegetables is that with a handful of affordable ingredients, you can create your own superfood that is shelf stable until opened. This class is appropriate for youth to adults of all levels. Disclaimer, not a substitute for medical advice. The information provided in media outlets while campaigning, at workshops, or during one-on-one consultations are for general information only and are not intended to provide medical advice and should not be relied upon as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. And so this gives you a little bit of background and paints the picture for you of like why it's so important for us to make our own superfoods. And just in this region where we live, prior to the pandemic, the statistics were that 1 in 12 Worcester County and 1 in 9 New England residents are food insecure. Since the pandemic, these numbers have really doubled, and we're probably thinking now, 1 in 7 or 1 in 6. And so, we're living in a very new reality now. And so from my perspective, I felt that this work was very needed, the work of Sprout Change, because of the challenges that we were facing with food insecurity and climate change, which became worsened with the pandemic. And now with climate change, the increase to the risk of hunger and malnutrition is up by 20% by 2050. And so, the pandemic made things double, and now it's going to be increasing at a 20%. So if we're now looking at 1 in 6 or 1 in 7 residents in Worcester County are food insecure, and a 20% increase to that, if it's 1 in 6, or, let me see what that math is. One moment. I'm actually curious now. So if we're looking at 1 in 6, that's about 16%. And then if we look at an increase in 20%, that would be times 2, I believe. So we're looking at 33. Instead of 16%, we're looking at 33%. And I don't know if I did the math correctly, but
32.
just wanted to understand. What did you say, Rose?
I said 32.
Yeah. So it's a big rise.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why it's so important for us to start learning sprouting, microgreens, gardening, because the soil is depleted, climate change is a concern, food insecurity is real and inaccessible. And then and conversations we've had lately, there's a lack of consumer knowledge, right?
Yes.
So let's go to the next slide. So with food insecurity, nearly 1 in 7 households with children cannot afford to buy enough food for their families. 1 in 4 are food insecure, are unlikely to qualify for most federal nutrition programs. And among SNAP households with children, 50% of the adults while receiving SNAP and almost 90% are employed the prior or subsequent year. So what does that mean? It means that even people that are employed right now are food insecure. Like, that's unheard of. There used to be a time in history, possibly 30 years ago, where that was unheard of. If you had a job, you had food. Now it's becoming very normalized that if you have a job, in order to have food on the table, you have to be a member at a food pantry, you have to be receiving government assistance. Like, it's such a new reality that we're living in. And so, I think it's wonderful to receive assistance. I think food pantries are wonderful. I think the government assistance is wonderful. At the same time, these are supposed to be short-term fixes. So if we have generations and generations who continue being food insecure and being born into food insecurity, we're essentially becoming less and less self-sufficient when it comes to our own food security. So it's a challenge on both ends. So I'm going to talk about the solutions for Sprout Change. At Sprout Change, we help everyday people grow their own organic healing foods because we believe healthy soil equals healthy food, equals a healthy planet ecosystem, equals healthy people. So we focus on soil health, climate action, food security, accessibility, and consumer education. And in the work that you've been doing this week, you've been learning sprouting. So that is already a countertop food that you can grow. I'm going to skip through this because this is more on our no-dig garden. And these are top nutrients in my research I've found are absolutely necessary for us to have optimal health. We need omega-3 fats. You're getting that from your fasting blend. Whether it's chia seeds or flax seeds, both are really high in omega-3 fats. We need iodine for our immunity. We need zinc. We need magnesium for our nervous system, vitamin D for our bone health, iron for our blood health, calcium also for our bone, health and nervous system health, B vitamins for our nervous system health, and vitamin C for our immunity health. These are top SproutChange superfoods.
Mm-hmm.
And today we're going to be focusing on the probiotics, prebiotics, and foods with chlorophyll. So, but this seed includes nuts, seeds, omegas, minerals, vitamins, herbs, and I'm happy to share on the side or at a future workshop, go into more details about why these are the top superfoods in SproutChange's opinion. At a very high level overview, my feedback is that these are foods that are extremely complex, and so they have an array of nutrition. And when paired together, this array of nutrition will provide you a holistic coverage in your nutrition in your nutrition period.
Regular nutrition. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Omega-3 fats. So omega-3 fats you'll get from flax seeds, which you're using in your fasting blend, or chia seeds,
Mm-hmm.
and cabbage. Can you believe that cabbage and cruciferous vegetables also have omega-3 fats? And so, when people tell me, oh, I have a restricted diet, or, I can't afford healthy food, immediately I think, well, can you afford cabbage? Because as long as I've been alive, cabbage has always been one of those vegetables that's been the most affordable. And it's also, ironically, very shelf stable. So you can keep cabbage in your fridge for a very long time, and it still is good. It's good for consumption. And so, so for the purpose of this today's lecture, we're going to be focusing on cabbage and using cabbage in cultured vegetables. Prebiotics and probiotics. Prebiotics are foods that feed good gut bacteria, for instance, fiber-rich foods, whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and legumes. And probiotics are live microorganisms essential for optimal overall gut health and immunity. Probiotics are in cultured foods, not pasteurized, or in a supplement form. And this is a testimonial from one of my clients who had a really severe case of Crohn's disease, and he was constantly in and out of the emergency room. He lost a lot of weight. He was extremely small. He couldn't eat anything because he was inflamed and had a lot of pain. And he worked with me for many months, probably 5 months. And would you believe that he entered remission? He went from not being able to eat or digest, having many conditions, to being able to reclaim his health and being able to go into remission and being able to enjoy foods again. Now, in this slide, we're going to start going into the do-it-yourself gut brain cultured vegetables. I personally really love Donna Gates, the founder of the Body Ecology Diet. She, in the past 30, 40 years has been a very big advocate in holistic health for cultured vegetables. And the wonderful thing about cultured vegetables that I learned from Donna Gates is not only do you save money by making your own cultured superfoods, you also get to increase the existing nutrients with a probiotic starter by 100 times, whilst creating non-previously existing B vitamins. What does that mean? That means that when you're culturing your vegetables, you actually increase those pre-existing nutrients hundreds of times. So if you love the benefits of carrots for your eyes, or if you love the benefits of, I don't know, this week we've been enjoying sprouted mung beans. Sprouted mung beans have a lot of health benefits, including giving us life energy. If you really thought that those were really amazing benefits, nutritional benefits, and today we're going to do that in the recipe I'm preparing. I brought some sprouts. If you add those sprouts, which is already a superfood, into your cultured vegetables, which is making another superfood, you're actually taking something that is already miraculously full of nutrients. And when you're culturing it, you're actually making the nutrients even more. And so and the wonderful thing about cultured vegetables is that you're preserving. So there's going to be a come a time where we're going to need to know how to preserve food on a consistent basis. Right now we can go shopping, but for those of us who are Christians, who are believers, we do believe that there's going to come a time when things are going to be more challenging to source, and we're going to need to have access and knowledge to be able to have our own healthy foods. And so when that time comes, we're going to need to also preserve that food, right? It's not just growing the food and harvesting the food. We also have to take care of that food so that it can last us for future times when we do need these foods. And culturing vegetables is one of the ways that I love preserving foods. And that's why I shared in the WhatsApp group with you, if you have any vegetables in your fridge, please let's use them in today's workshop, in today's lecture, because that way you get to use something that could go to waste and make it into something that's a superfood. And preserve it until the time is right for you and your family to enjoy it. And so let me see what the next slide is. This week we covered do-it-yourself sprouts with mung beans. As I shared last week with you, my mom has been teaching sprouting for over 40 years. And she started Germinemos, which means let's sprout in Spanish. And my mom can sprout anything. Any little seed you find, any legume, any grain. I mean, there are so many different ways of sprouting, and she really has that gift of handling seedlings and also preparing seedlings to make sprouted foods like sprouted casseroles or sprouted crackers or sprouted raw treats. And so really tasty. There's many ways of eating foods that are holistic and also that are tasty. And so let's go into our activity now. Has anybody here eaten fermented foods or cultured foods, and what was that food?
Uh, I don't know if I mean,
Have you had pickle? Because I know pickle is very typical of the Haitian cuisine. And
oh, pickles, yes, yes, yes. We put it into vinegar. We mix everything together. Onion, carrot, cabbage, hot pepper, and then we put vinegar. We let it rest. So you can start eating it the same day you do it. And sometimes it would last for weeks in the refrigerator.
yeah, I feel like when it lasts weeks in the refrigerator, that's when it's the most nutritious, because it had time for there to be a more of a fermentation process.
Mm-hmm.
So the vinegar helps to pre-digest it so you get to absorb it better. So that's very important. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're using a vinegar that you made yourself, let's say traditionally, if we think about historically, the ancient ingredients, right? We were think about when pickles first started, I imagine when pickles, the recipe first started, you were probably having a living vinegar to use it, not a distilled vinegar, or maybe a homemade type of vinegar, right? Let's say from apples or other fruits. And so
Mm-hmm.
then you use that. And I feel like in my mind, from a holistic perspective, I feel like that's more nutritious because it's living. And then that's more digestible because you're getting the probiotics that we need for the digestion, right? And so that's my personal hypothesis. Not everybody in the holistic world, especially when you're talking about fermentation or vinegars, has this perspective. So thank you for sharing your feedback on that. And so we did discuss earlier the difference between cultured vegetables and fermented foods. And now my last question before we get started, have you ever, besides pickles doesn't count, besides
Mm-hmm.
pickles, have you ever fermented foods before?
Yes. Uh,
We used to do fermented milk as well, and then cucumbers.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And was the milk kefir? Did you make a kefir?
How do you call that? It's like you want to make cheese or natural cheese with that. So you put it somewhere, and after that my mom used to do it. We used to do it as children as well, because when you eat everybody has you don't boil the milk. It has to be fresh. You put I think lemon, something like that, you put in it, and then you cover it, you put it in a dark area, and then tomorrow you'll have fermented milk.
Wow.
Drink it with honey. Oh, we used to love that.
Mm-hmm.
But if the adult wanted to make like they call natural cheese, they will leave it a little bit longer. But this I don't know. I never did it myself, so I don't know the process.
I love that. I know that there is a thin milk that is fermented, and the name here is kefir, but I think kefir really comes from maybe Eastern Europe or Russian, because
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's a native English word. I think it's a word that comes from a Slavic language. That's my
Oh.
perspective. But kefir is a fermented milk, so it sounds very similar. The milk that you're mentioning, Marie, it
Mm-hmm.
sounds similar to this one because and I've done a fermented milk with sesame seeds. And I sweetened it with dates. And actually was very tasty.
Very
Um,
tasty.
yeah, very tasty.
Mhm.
So I feel like this the your memories of the honey milk um, reminds me of a modern date milk version. Um, so what we're gonna need is we're gonna need a jar, a large bowl, a wooden spoon, or you can use your hands. We're not going to follow this exact recipe with the 800 grams because we're going to go by the size of your jar. And so there's two ways of doing this. You could do it very precise and you're measuring everything with a scale, a measuring scale, or you could do it the eyeball version. And that's the version that we're going to do today is we're going to do things based on the size of the jar and we're going to fill it naturally. It's very important that we learn this version and then we can do the more precise recipe because the precise recipe is literally just the formula. If you wanted to make a lot of fermented vegetables in advance, but you could do it easily just with the eyeball method. We're gonna need some real salt. It doesn't have to be sea salt. It could be Himalayan salt or it could be Celtic salt. That's a very good salt. Um, Optional is seaweed. If you have seaweed, we can use seaweed. Optional is also herbs. If you want to flavor your cultured vegetables, you can use, I think Rose was sharing earlier that she wanted to use garlic flakes. And so you're going to want to use an herb. It's optional, but if you want to use an herb, you want to have that available. Also optional is a probiotic capsule or a culture starter. You don't need it because vegetables do have microorganisms. One of them is called L-plantarin. And L-plantarin is one of probably millions of probiotic strains that exist, but it's one of the one of the most well-known. L-plantarin exists on plants, and it's a beneficial bacteria, microorganism, and probiotic. And L-plantarin research that Donna Gates has done with her scientists shows that in our gut, it's one of the leader probiotics. So if you were going to, let's say, and this is just based on Donna Gates' research, who has done a lot of research on using her business is called the Body Ecology Diet. She even has a program to using a certain diet to mitigate and reduce the symptoms of autism spectrum disorder. And she has a lot of testimonials where she has had results
Wow.
eliminating those symptoms. And I
Wow.
believe her research because I have found very similar results with highly sensitive clients that I've been able to do interventions with them, looking at the diet and the natural remedies and as well as internal cleanses, and all that the person started off as highly sensitive, they continue being highly sensitive. However, now that they have a diet that is highly nourishing, and now that they have they've done a cleanse, they're able to manage, they're able to emotionally regulate much, much better. And so the high sensitivity does not go away, the emotional overwhelm does not go away, but your body and your nervous system is able to emotionally regulate so much better now that it has that hyper nourishing. And so that is, I've seen that very true, and that's one of the reasons why this research that Donna Gates, when I discovered it in 2017, I was really passionate about it. And so, and it definitely became something that I felt like was something that I wanted to build upon, and I have built upon it. And so, and now today, fast forward in the last 5 years, living fermented foods has become very popular. And so now you can go to Whole Foods. Before you couldn't. Before, the only fermented foods were on the shelf, not in the fridge. Now you can go to the fridge section at a Whole Foods, or even the Adventist Book Center, a better choice. You can go there and you find cultured vegetables in the fridge. And that's a new thing. It didn't exist before. And so
But
that, yes.
the only thing with these cultured vegetable on the market, they are so salty. It's a lot of salt in them.
Wow,
So
that's really good feedback.
yeah.
So one brand that I like when I don't have time to culture, I mean, I have a lot of cultures, but one brand that I do like is called Real Pickles, and they do not use vinegar. I think they just call it Real Pickles because it's like, they're not the fake pickles, like it's like it's real probiotic,
Mhm, mhm,
pickles. And so Real Vegetables is a cooperative, it's a business model that the employees are co-owners of the business. So it's supposed to be a more equitable type of economy,
mhm.
considerate of the employee. So that business model is really beautiful. And then on top of that, they try to do locally sourced organic vegetables, and they do the processing using, live cultures. And so, it's a living anaerobic fermentation process. And that is a fermentation process that their fermentation process is the fermentation process that I support.
Okay.
You can add sprouts, as I said, to this. It's optional. So let's get started. We just have a few minutes. I feel like that we'll end class on time, because the preparing the recipes is not that much. It's not that hard. So now I'm going to set up for the demonstration part. One thing I didn't mention, if you need we're gonna need to wash the cabbage or the vegetables, you're gonna want a bowl with filtered water and baking soda. So we're gonna want,
Mm.
I'm gonna stop sharing this so that we can see where we are. And I think this focuses on the table in front of me, which is good. So I'm using this size mason jar, the wide mouth, the one that you have for the sprouts. That's the size I'm using, but you can use any mason jar size or a glass container. Like it could be an old pasta jar, it could be, an old jam jar. So glass is best.
Ah, was a mouse striking?
Sorry?
No, I'm all set, yes, that's fine.
Okay. The next thing we're gonna need is if you can find an old
Ziploc.
that Ziploc or plastic that is clean. This one was from the mung beans that I purchased for our program, and so I'm just gonna upcycle it. And what this works is the jar, it's a metal lid. It's gonna corrode with the acid.
Oh,
We
okay.
want to prevent the corrosion. It's not,
Okay.
it's just so that, it's just to save your lid, but you don't have to do it. I
Okay.
actually don't like using the plastic lids for this because we do want it to be closed. We don't want extra air. So, but the plastic creates a barrier so that this metal part doesn't get, corrode.
Oh,
Yeah, rust. It's just a prevention. Have some sprouts. I'm gonna use some dill for flavoring. That's the one that I want. I have some baking soda. If you need to wash your vegetables, you're gonna want to wash it with baking soda.
okay.
I have some water. And I'll walk you through how I'm doing it. I'm gonna cut the vegetable, cut the cabbage, and then soak it in some water with baking soda, and then I'm gonna take it, rinse it, and then put it in the,
Yeah.
yeah. So like I said, you can use you can upcycle your jar, that's fine. So in my fridge, I had an old carrot. So I'm gonna use it because I haven't used it. And I've had some interesting radishes that I haven't used from this fall, some multicolored radishes. I personally, I'm not a big fan of fermenting radishes because they get soft. So I'm only fermenting them because I don't want them to spoil, and I don't think I'm going to use them for the rest of the. I don't think I'm going to be using them fresh, to be honest. So I love culturing because it gives me an opportunity to look at my fridge and say, what do I have in here that I can add and I can preserve it, right? Right now I'm cleaning the extra leaves that on this cabbage because I've had this cabbage for a while. I've been wanting to do culture vegetables and I haven't gotten around to it, so I'm really glad that now I have an opportunity to do that with you. But it is something that I actively do consistently. Even when I travel, I culture vegetables. So for instance, I was recently in Dominican Republic and I was culturing, and the wonderful thing about being in a tropical climate is that the vegetables ferment so quickly. So my cultured vegetables in Dominican Republic were ready by like day 2 or day 3, So that was really beautiful. I really enjoyed that. I'm gonna get the camera to focus on the food just because I'm in a different location today than I was last week. And so I guess I'm gonna use this this bowl to put the cut vegetables that I wanna rinse. I'm gonna start cutting. And so I do like taking a few leaves first. If you're using cabbage, do take off like 2 or 3 leaves from the top because we're going to use that to make a ball. And that's going to be the way that we prevent the cut cabbage from rising. When we're fermenting or culturing, as the vegetables are going through the fermentation process, they get bubbly and carbonation happens because of the beneficial bacteria breaking down the sugars. And in that process, sometimes things move and they shift. Oops, just like my apron moved and shifted. Sometimes things will move and shift, and so you want to keep them in place. And so we're going to use these extra cabbage leaves. We're going to save them towards the end to make sure that our cabbage that we chopped up actually stays down and ferments. I think that should be enough. So I essentially have, it doesn't have to be perfect. Essentially I have like, you know, 2 or 3 leaves like this, right? I'll show you how to roll them up shortly. Now I'm going to start cutting this. I usually cut right in the middle, or I'll cut a quarter. So because I've had this cabbage for a while, it really shows you how much I practice this. I literally use what was in the fridge. I'm gonna just cut a couple parts that I
So
don't.
we're just gonna use a quarter of it.
No, you're gonna use. Can you show me your jar? It depends on your jar. Let me see your
It's
jar.
the one. The same. Here it is. You
Okay,
see?
for that, you're gonna need a quarter. You have a very large cabbage. If you
Oh,
have more jars, do you have more jars, Rose?
not right now.
Okay, you're probably gonna need to make the rest of it pickles or save it for a future time. But
Okay.
for that, I'm eyeballing it. With that cabbage size, I believe you can do just a quarter. So if you just
Okay.
like 1/4 of it, then
Okay.
that should be good for the jar size that you have.
Okay.
And I'm gonna share a little bit about, so I just keep quartering. So right, so I'm gonna quarter again, because this was a small cabbage. So remember, I cut it in half, then I quarter, and then now it's 1/4, because I have a small cabbage. This is 1/4. And for this one, how do I normally cut? Oh, I cut the long ways. So it's gonna look like, if I'm showing it to you, see this corner? I'm just kind of like little spaghettis, right? Like long lines. So I just keep cutting it. But you can do it any which way. I've seen people, you know, cut their way. This is just what I do. I end up having a lot of like kind of like long pieces, but it doesn't have to be too long. Your cabbage is very big, Rose, so you
Mhm.
might want to cut the pieces in half, because this is the ideal size. That's about 2 inches.
Oh, okay. 2 inches. Okay.
So what might happen with yours is you might end up with like a like a cabbage piece this long, right? So you'll just want to cut it in half again if
Okay.
that happens.
Okay.
And it's just for making it, think of like how you're making pickles.
Please, yes.
Think of like that, because you want to be able to like put it in your fork and bite it, right? So you don't want it to be too big, too chunky, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had this cabbage because I actually had a client that I was working with, and I needed to teach her how to make cultured vegetables for her immune health. Unfortunately, she got sick, so I didn't make the recipe with her, so I still had the cabbage. But it is something that I swear by, and I always, every single client I work with, because in my opinion, if I can teach you how to make your own superfoods, that's the solution, right? I can also teach you how to buy your superfoods, but since we're here and we're believers, I'll be very transparent. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like how Jesus did with the parable, you know, he taught. He said we have to teach people to fish,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so I'm not a big like preacher, as you know, but there are a lot of just Bible principles that for me just make a lot of sense. And so I'll, you know, if it's a best practice, then it gets implemented. I also feel like culturing vegetables is one way of financially thinking about investment,
Absolutely.
right? You're taking something basic and you're
Mm-hmm.
transforming it into a superfood.
And saving too.
Yeah, that's a return on investment.
Go to waste into waste.
Yeah, ROI, a big
Yeah.
investment.
Yeah.
How is it a return on investment?
Yeah.
Rose, you mentioned saving,
Mm-hmm.
and then we're preserving it. That's another investment.
Correct.
In the future, if we can't use electricity, we have something shelf stable that's preserved, that's shelf stable.
Absolutely.
So when we need it, you know, we open it.
Are you cutting the carrot now?
Yeah, let me show you. I'm not cutting the carrots, I'm still cutting cabbage.
Oh.
That's what my cutting board looks like, but you can cut the carrots. I just cut the carrots in circles or half moons. I do full
Oh.
moons and then I cut them into half moons.
Oh.
So you can, or how do you say a half? I said a half moon, but there's probably a technical term for it. In my opinion, this is a good size of cabbage.
Mm-hmm.
This is about 2 handfuls, a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more maybe. So once you have about 2 handfuls,
Mm-hmm.
Rose, you
Mm-hmm.
can stop. You can use the rest for a future.
Okay.
Rose, did you find, or Marie, did you find that you had like a chunk like this? Like when you were slicing and you ended up with a chunk like this?
Yes, I do. It's inside.
Yes.
I love using this to wrap the leaves. So remember those leaves that you took apart?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
I love wrapping them like this.
Mm-hmm.
And that creates the stopper. That creates what we're going to use to stop the vegetables from rising.
Okay.
In
Oh.
the US, they sell a glass weight to
Mm-hmm.
hold it down. So for people that are very serious about fermenting, they will
Mm-hmm.
use a glass weight to hold the vegetables down. But I'm
Okay.
teaching you your own weight, how to make your own weight.
Okay.
Everything I'm teaching you, as you can tell, you don't need any fancy gadgets. You don't need extra instruments. You just need your hands, some basic vegetables that you have available or that you can access. And, you know, for people that are going through food insecurity, cabbage is always a staple that is available at food pantries. And so,
Mm-hmm.
you know, when we're teaching programming or workshops to people that do rely on food pantries, it's my favorite way of teaching them this recipe because if they're going to a food pantry, obviously they cannot afford possibly probiotics, right? Like probiotic capsules. And so why not make your own probiotics?
Mm-hmm.
And so, so I'm cutting the, first I'm going to clean the carrot a little bit. I'm just going to take the brown. I probably don't need to because there's something about dirt. Dirt has microorganisms that are naturally antidepressants.
Mm-hmm.
And so you want it clean, but not too clean. Also, the wonderful thing about fermenting is that the beneficial probiotics, they eat up pathogens.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So let's say, for instance, you accidentally didn't clean this too well. That's
Uh-huh.
okay. When it's fermenting, any pathogens are actually going to get eaten up.
Okay.
So isn't that wonderful? Now you have this way of like being able to increase the nutrients, increase your budget because you just saved a bunch of money. And on top of that, I just forgot what I said. I got so excited.
You're killing.
Pathogen.
Yeah, you kill the pathogens. Thank you. Um, and and the end result when you eat these vegetables, I eat this vegetable or I'll drink the juice. You know how like when you culture, you have that little juice, or when you have pickles, you have that juice, that brine.
Uh-huh.
That brine is the most nutritious because it's the collection of all the nutrients.
Mhm.
And that, when you're sick, you want to drink that. So when I'm really sick, I don't even eat the cultured vegetables. I'll just drink a little bit of the juice, and that like just completely like, I don't know, kills whatever's going on. I just got a whole new defense and a whole new army of L-plantarin to kill out all those pathogens that got in the way. L-plantarin is the beneficial probiotic that the research has been shown is one of the most is one of the leader beneficial probiotics.
Okay.
And other beneficial probiotics, they follow L-plantarum. So when plantarum forms and organizes a chain, the other ones also organize around it. So it's like it's like when you study the gut microbiome, L-plantarum just, there's so much that we don't know. So we're still learning more about what's going on in our gut microbiome. But what scientists have discovered is that L-plantarum, of all the microorganisms, they're the leader probiotics in our gut system. So whenever you're ready, you let me know when you feel, or you can show me what your vegetable, your cut vegetables looks like.
Mm-hmm. That's my cabbage. Do you see it?
Yeah, I can't tell how much you have because the bowl's big, but do you have 2 handfuls?
Yes, I do.
Okay, I think 2 handfuls is like the perfect amount that we need for this jar.
Mhm.
And yeah, you have good carrots. So
Uh-huh.
we're gonna let's give them a wash. So I'm gonna show you actually. I'm gonna position the camera so I can show you. I'm gonna take this cabbage and I'm gonna put it in the bowl just like you did to get cleansed. And I have some baking soda. You can
Mm-hmm.
use salt. I'm
Mm-hmm.
using baking soda, and this is an organic cabbage, so I'm not worried so much about the pesticides, but I still do want to, disinfect it as well as I can. I'm not doing that with the carrot because I did wash it before, but because this is the inside of the cabbage,
Okay.
I'm just taking an extra precaution.
Okay.
Like I said, like let's say we were missionaries in the field,
Mm-hmm.
and if we couldn't wash it, we couldn't wash it. We would know
Oh,
that
good.
we would know that it's very important to watch. I'm not saying skip it. I would never say that. But I'm just saying, like in very extreme circumstances,
Take this.
it gives me,
Okay, password you?
sorry?
Louis,
Money well free.
Louis,
I was
put your phone on mute.
they said that
Louis,
yes.
put your phone on mute.
Okay.
Okay. So, the cabbage,
Mm-hmm.
if we were in, let's say, traveling somewhere where it was really hard to wash the vegetables, if we had to make this recipe, or let's
Mm-hmm.
say we didn't have a lot of water, we had to
Yes.
be conservative.
Mm-hmm.
We would rinse this as well as we could
Mm-hmm.
and trust that in the fermentation process that
Mm-hmm.
the beneficial probiotics on the plant will
Mm-hmm.
multiply, proliferate, and kill the pathogens. So,
Okay.
so right now we're doing a lot of precautions because we can. But I'm just
Absolutely.
very worst case scenario that if we
Uh,
were in a situation where water was scarce and we had to be very intentional with the water, we have
mm-hmm.
a lot of peace of mind knowing that if we just lightly cleansed it, the fermentation process in itself, the culturing process in itself, um, kills pathogens.
Okay. So how about the blocker? Don't we wash it also with baking soda?
Say that again, which part?
the part that the inner part that we're gonna use as a way to put to
Yeah,
keep the
you can put everything in here.
yes.
Um, yeah, so I'm gonna do the same. It's a good question. And also the top leaves, I'm gonna put them in here too.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna let it soak for like a little less than like probably like a minute or two, not that long,
Okay.
for time purposes. So I guess I don't have enough space, to be honest, to use my radishes. I think I was very ambitious. But it just gives you an example.
Yeah.
I'm glad I brought it, that you can use, your extra vegetables in the fridge. It's a
Mhm.
wonderful way to upcycle anything you have extra.
Mhm.
I do have extra cabbage from this, so I think tomorrow I might be doing another activity like this. I did have a random piece of celery, so I'm gonna cut it too. Because I know I'm not gonna, I wanted to use it for beans, because I do like putting some vegetables in my beans,
Okay.
but this one hasn't made it to my beans either. I've been doing a lot, like I've been nourishing a lot lately with sprouts.
Mhm.
I've been listening a lot to my body, and I've just been feeling like I want to eat very simply. And sometimes I used to love making very complex meals. And right now I just feel like I just want very simple meals. Like, I think it's because my brain is very full. And so I just feel like, okay, I want nourishing and simple. So my lifestyle is a little bit different, but before I do love cooking. I just feel like I need to be in a different schedule to take that sweet time, right? To do all those extra steps. So this is what my presentation looks like. I'm going to show you how I'm going to rinse everything. So because I'm doing a demonstration here in the office, I'm going to rinse. I'm going to take another bowl, but you can do it in your, you can take a break and go to your kitchen and
Mhm.
strain this and give it another wash, just like rinse with fresh filtered water.
Okay.
So you're gonna wanna take a break to do that, and then we're gonna stuff. The next thing we're doing is stuffing.
Okay.
So I'm gonna just go to my sink and make sure that I get rid of this extra water, and I'll be right back. I'm back.
Okay. I'll be back. I always show that we're not leaving any of the baking soda.
I usually just give it 1 or 2 rinses. I don't think, to be perfectly honest,
Mm-hmm.
um, baking soda is actually beneficial for our health in the sense of, obviously it's much better if it's if it's real sodium bicarbonate, if it's real
Mm-hmm.
bicarbonate. There's man-made and then there's, naturally existing sodium bicarbonate. Um, this is not, this is man-made sodium bicarbonate. At the same time, it's still the acid, or I think I think sodium bicarbonate is considered more of a base, but it does taste sour. So I was thinking acid for that reason. But
Mm-hmm.
it's alkaline. So usually alkaline things are more on the base side or more in the middle of base and acidic.
Mm-hmm.
So I see baking soda as a cleanser, but I also disinfectant and odorizer, but I also see it as a mineral that is healthy for us.
Yes.
Especially if we're experiencing indigestion or acid
Mhm.
reflux,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
heartburn. At least in Europe, they'll give you like an actual bicarbonate capsule for you to take as a drink, to relieve the indigestion.
That's too back home.
Yeah, yeah. And so we don't do this here because our industry is different. But there is the sodium bicarbonate, the baking soda is, in my eyes, healthy. Um,
Okay.
we shouldn't abuse it, and like take too much of it because I think that can also do the opposite. But there are some doctors, some holistic doctors, who recommend consuming um, water with baking soda for patients that have cancer, not a substitute for medical advice. So there are holistic practitioners who part of their intervention is
Mm-hmm.
giving either injections with sodium bicarbonate or liquid blends with the sodium bicarbonate that they consume to to make their pH less acidic, so
Uh,
that it makes the cancer hard to survive.
okay. Mm-hmm.
Not a substitute for medical advice. So that is an actual intervention, holistic intervention that I
Mm-hmm.
believe exists. So let's go into now the mixing. So
Okay.
we have our ingredients. I
Mm-hmm.
have a bigger bowl, but you can use the bowl that you were using before
Mm-hmm.
to mix. So I'm going to put this aside and I'm going to put the leaves that we had aside, right? The leaves that we're going to use on the top. And in this bowl is where I'm going to mix, we're going to essentially make our recipe however we want it. And so this is when you want to put your salt and you want to add your seasoning and you want to add your carrots or whatever extra vegetables. So I'm adding carrots, right? I'm adding this old celery that I'm reusing. Another thing that we sometimes forget when we think of healthy living is that minerals don't really go away. Like you can't really cook minerals. They're existing. Elements always exist. They don't have a shelf life. But vitamins have a shelf life. Vitamins are
Yes.
very fragile. And
Yes.
so from a mineralization perspective, the minerals here are stable. But anything really fresh, I mean, cabbage has vitamin C and other vitamins, including B vitamins. Carrots as well have active vitamins, and the celery. And so those vitamins will be multiplied in the fermentation process. I'm mixing these. I'm going to add some salt. At this point in my experience,
Mm-hmm.
I don't really measure, but I did share a measurement. So I would say for this amount, I would probably do like a half a teaspoon of salt, possibly for this amount. This is about two
Is
fifths.
it taste or is important?
Sorry?
Is it to salt to taste or is it
Salt
uh
to taste, salt to taste.
or to
And
taste? Oh,
and salt to taste is the salt is playing an important role.
Okay.
So beneficial probiotics, they need minerals. They're going to get the minerals from the vegetables, but they
Mhm.
need extra minerals. So
Okay.
salt is very important because probiotics, they feed on prebiotics, which are like the sugars, right? The
Mhm.
fiber-rich sugars, and probiotics also need minerals to proliferate, to exist well,
Mo- Okay.
multiply. They're really multiplying because of the sugars. Every time they eat the simple sugars in the vegetables, that
Mhm.
gives them like energy, and then their excrements are actually healthy for us. So their
Mhm.
excrement is actually more probiotics and more. So they're converting. I wouldn't say excrements. That's probably
Yeah.
not the
No.
correct conversion, but
Uh-huh.
they're just doing a conversion. So they're doing the conversion of the simple sugar, and their input is a simple sugar. I'll do it that way. Their input is a simple sugar. Their output is probiotics multiplying, right?
Okay.
So
Okay.
so that's how, so they feed, and then they are able to proliferate more because of their feeding. But their feeding actually is good for us, beneficial for us, because now we're consuming vegetables that have a reduced sugar content and an increased nutrient content.
Okay.
How wonderful is that?
Very.
Yeah. So I'm going to show you. So you're seasoning it. I'm just going to, everything is eyeball at this point,
Mhm.
and that should let you know, like, you you are welcome. Now, don't try to put too many ingredients. I've done that. I've done a super version. It did not taste good because it had too
Oh,
much going on. So I encourage you to experiment, but you're going to find that when you're experimenting and you make the super healthy version, you might
mhm.
not like it yourself. But don't throw it away. I
You
know.
made that you put some sesame seed. What about
Yeah, you can.
no, I don't have sesame. I have the other one. How do we call it again?
Pumpkin seeds,
No. Mm, the one that is, here it is.
flax seeds.
Black. Uh-huh.
I don't know if the flax seeds is gonna work. I've never done it. I was actually tempted, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it'll work. But I think you might get like a film. You know how like
Correct. Mm-hmm.
tasting. So I don't know how, it's a textured thing. Of course, it's
Yes.
going to be more nutritious, but
Mm-hmm.
is that how you want to eat your vegetables, with a oily film? Because that's what's going to happen.
Uh-huh.
You're gonna
Uh-huh.
But I'm sure it's healthy, so
Oh,
if you're okay with that recipe, yes, go ahead and do
well,
it.
I'll do it just the simple way to see exactly how it comes out. Then
Experiment, yeah.
yes, yes, exactly.
So this is what this looks like right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna add some salt. Um, And it's just a little bit. I'm going to use my fingers. I'm not measuring it. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to go like this. Um, I'll probably add a little bit more, but it's to your liking. And that was
Mm-hmm.
probably not a half a tablespoon. That was probably 1/8 of a teaspoon.
Fun.
Um,
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, I said half a tablespoon, but I meant earlier
I,
I said half a teaspoon. I think
yes.
right now when I went like this twice, that was
Mm-hmm.
more like probably 1/8 of a
1/8
teaspoon.
of a teaspoon. Oh, mm-hmm.
I noticed I didn't grab that much, so that's why.
Yes.
Um, and just for fun, I'm gonna use some sprouts just for fun.
Uh, did you make those sprout? Did you grow
Did
those
yeah.
sprout? Oh wow. Oh wow.
So I can definitely teach in a future workshop how I do it step by step. This is a pilot program, so the goal was to see how can we do a program that involves a couple recipes and involves 2 classes a week and
Mm-hmm.
for 3 weeks, and so we're learning in this process. It's very experimental still. It's not a tried and true process. We're essentially just trying to make it as quickly as possible. How
Yeah.
can we get people to have a transformation in 3 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
Also, as simply as possible, right? With like 3 recipes and three three fitness.
First fitness session.
So this to me, in my eyes, is ready for mixing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna mix it with my hands because that's what I have available, but you can use a spoon.
Yeah.
It smells so nice. I'm really enjoying the smell. I personally really like cultured vegetables. I almost like them more than,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if it's because now I know the benefits so much that I've convinced myself that this is the best way, but I
Mm-hmm.
personally like cultured vegetables more than I like a salad now.
Okay. Okay.
Because now I'm thinking because now I see myself as like a machine, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I need to produce X amount. In order to produce X amount, I need to have X energy. How do I get X energy? So I'm like hacking myself, and I'm like, okay, I need to increase my energy or increase my nutrients so that I could do X output. So I've mixed this. I have the piece. Remember, we washed one of the pieces. Now, and then here's my other piece. I'm going to combine them, but you can, if you have a big piece, that's okay. So
Mm-hmm.
essentially, this is about my hand size.
Yes.
And now I'm going to take a leaf that I took out before, and I'm going to put it like in the bottom end, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
just going to
Mm-hmm.
start wrapping it up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take another leaf,
Uh-huh.
and I'm going to wrap it, and you're going to end up with a little ball. It doesn't have to be
Okay.
perfect.
Yeah.
See how I'm holding it? I'm shaping it with my hand.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're going to put on the top to hold everything down.
Down.
So
Okay.
I'm going to put it on the side because we're going to work with it again. But I just
Okay.
wanted to show you that that's how we're using those pieces.
Okay.
Now we start filling the jar. So here's the jar.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm going to start filling it. There are fancy things like a mason jar, canning funnel that you can use to stuff it. But I'm trying to make this so that we have the less gadgets. You can, as you can see, you can do this anywhere as long as you have cabbage and salt
Mm-hmm.
and a jar.
Mm-hmm.
You could be traveling anywhere in the world and you can make this.
Yes.
One thing I forgot to say is that you're going to need a bowl
Mm-hmm.
to put this in when it's fermenting. So as you see, I keep filling this. I just
Mm-hmm.
keep filling it because I'm practically at the end.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, I really liked when I made the cultured vegetables not too stuffed because then you get extra juice. Right now, I'm not gonna get extra juice because it's very stuffed.
Mm-hmm.
So I personally do like it when it's like not too stuffed. But I think that probably the carrots and the mung beans and the celery, I didn't think about it, gave it that extra bulk.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the full version. It looks like you're gonna have some space, so you're gonna probably get a lot of liquid in yours, which is, I think it's nice. Personally, I
Mm-hmm.
like it when mine has that extra liquid because, like I said, in the winter time, I will take a shot of that. I will take a little
Okay.
shot, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what I will use to boost my immunity when,
Mm-hmm.
when you get that something in your throat or in your nose.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Uh-huh.
a sign for me. Take a little bit of the probiotic juice. And
Uh-huh.
within 3 hours, I swear, whatever was happening, it's in the
Done.
past. I try to kill it right away. Um, and it's very nice if you know that you're getting sick the night before or if you feel low
Yeah.
energy. Because usually
Yeah.
if you feel low energy, then you get the sniffles, right? So as soon as you know you're low energy, I gotta drink this or eat some of this the night
Mm-hmm.
before so that when you're repairing at night, sleeping in your repair, you wake
Mm-hmm.
up brand new.
Fresh. Okay.
So it kills it because when we're sleeping, that's when our body repairs, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that way all the beneficial soldiers, microorganisms go in and they just take charge and tell our system what to do. Um, so let me show you how I top it now with
Your bowl.
the ball stopper. And then after that is when we're gonna put the water. So it's gonna be, mine is gonna be very stuffed because I did add a lot of vegetables. And I actually don't wanna take the vegetables out. I would rather keep it stuffed personally because I don't know what I'm gonna do with the extra vegetables. So I'm not gonna get a lot of liquid in mine. Can I
Mm-hmm.
see what yours looks like, Rose?
Hold on. Give me 2 seconds. I'm gonna wash my hands so that I can hold my bowl.
Okay.
My okay. I am getting my ball ready. My stopper. Oh, it's pretty big.
It looks good. I think that's the perfect size for the hole
Okay.
you have.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a perfect size. And what I do, Rose, when
Mm-hmm.
your vegetables are ready to consume,
Uh-huh.
that ball, I don't throw it out. I chop it up. And I chop it up really small and then I put
Mhm.
it into, whatever I'm eating.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't let it go to waste. Even though
Okay.
that was a stopper, I still cut it up when it's time, to serve the
Mhm.
cultured vegetables. I just put it on the side.
Okay. Perfect.
Now we have something that looks like this. Yours looks like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now we add the water very carefully. So now the water is going to go in between. Everywhere there's a gap, the water is going to fill it.
Okay.
Now we add the water very carefully. I'm going to show because I wasn't showing. So mine's almost full. Yeah, if I press down, the water starts to try to come down. It doesn't have to be too full because when it's fermenting,
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna
It
rot.
will.
Yeah, and it's
Oh,
gonna leak.
liquid.
Yeah, and we're gonna need another bowl, preferably like a plastic bowl or it could be glass, just a bowl that you don't really mind, that you don't really
Uh-huh.
need.
Uh-huh.
Um, and we're now gonna use the the plastic sheet that we needed.
How about wrapping paper, wax paper? No?
You can, but I don't know if the wax paper will. So for instance, because it's paper, I
Mm-hmm.
haven't experimented. Because it's paper, I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
the wetness will eventually mold.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's true.
So for me, it's not that I like using plastic, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's more about whenever I have to deal with plastic or something that is not sustainable, I
Mm-hmm.
think about in the long run, is this
Mm-hmm.
helping me make sustainable choices? It's
Mm-hmm.
it's not it's not the first choice, but am I able to, for instance, if the plastic can help you save this, it's worth it, right? You're just reusing something that you have. Well, I hope you have like plastic from your vegetables, maybe? Do you have plastic from your vegetables or?
Yeah, and I have sewing up too. Can I use that? No.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
We just want to create a barrier for the metal.
Oh, it's not to rust.
Yeah, because we don't want that rust flavor in our food.
Mm-hmm. So how high should my water be here?
I think it looks great. You want the water to hit the rim? Did it hit the rim?
No, not yet.
Okay, you want it to hit the rim.
Okay.
So I just cut this with a knife.
Right under the stopper?
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be great. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna, the upcycled paper, plastic,
Mm-hmm.
or you could use your plastic wrap.
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna place it on top. And that's gonna create a barrier with the lid. And this is gonna leak. When it's fermenting, it's gonna be releasing juices. So
Uh-huh.
you're gonna want to, I'm gonna grab this bowl, and this is where it's gonna be for 1 week. You wanna put it in a, when we're done, so you're gonna want another bowl. That looks great, Rose.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're gonna put the lid on top, and we wanna close it as much as possible, but we don't want it to be so tight. We don't want it to be super tight, but we want it to be closed.
Mm-hmm.
Because I filled this so much, it doesn't want to close. But I'll do it. I'll get there. It's gonna break down as it ferments, but right now I just don't want to take anything out because I don't want to have to prepare it. I only want to eat sprouts right now. There we go. And it's leaking, so it's releasing some of the, when I closed it, because I had to press down the ball that we made, the stopper, it's
Uh-huh.
already releasing water, so
Uh-huh.
going down to the bottom. And this is why we need something to catch it, because
Mm-hmm.
it's going to do that. As it ferments, it's going to release fluid.
Water. Mm-hmm. Sorry. Okay.
So then the next thing we want to do is put it in a bowl,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to put this in a dark area away from direct sunlight for 1 week.
Okay.
If we were in a tropical area, this would be ready in 3 days. But because it's winter time right now, or it's almost winter time, it's cold for us,
Mm-hmm.
it will probably take us about a week for us to, you will notice, if you look at this in 3 days, you're gonna notice little bubbles. And so that's a sign for you that the fermentation has started.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but you should be able to enjoy this by next Sunday. You should have
Okay.
your cultured vegetables, and once you open it, you want to put it in the fridge.
Okay.
Once it's in the fridge, I personally don't know that it has a shelf life, like an expiration. I personally don't think it does because it's a living food.
Mm-hmm.
And so because it's already been preserved, as
Uh-huh.
long as you keep it shelf stable, as long as you keep it at a stable cold temperature that doesn't fluctuate too much,
Mm-hmm.
the probiotics should stay alive and I have, between us, I know it's recorded, but between us, I have cultured vegetables in my fridge that are more than 2 years old, and I still go to them. So it's preserved, and it stays fine. And so yeah. But those are like the ones that last that long are my experiments. Those are like the ones that I like put like 20 things in it, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not something that I could enjoy like every single day. It's like one of those things that I'm like, today is a good day for a lot of nutrition.
Uh-huh.
But most of the time, I try to eat my cultured vegetables because they're pleasant to taste. I actually enjoy the flavor. So for instance, what I'll do with cultured vegetables is sometimes I'll do it as a replacement for lime or lemon,
Okay.
vinegar. So for instance, you're making a tossed salad, right?
Yes, yes,
You're
yes.
making the vinaigrette. So for the vinaigrette, I'll take a little bit, like let's say 2 tablespoons of this,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I'll add some oil and I'll add some salt, and that's my base, my
Yes.
vinaigrette.
Yes,
to
yes.
season the other vegetables. And now I have extra vegetables and probiotics.
Okay,
Yeah. And so, you're not using extra lemon or lime because you already have your homemade sour.
okay, okay. Perfect.
So, I know today's lesson was very long. Do you have
Mhm.
any questions before we wrap up?
Well, I think you said I can do it with any type of vegetables. No.
Yes, but do you just remember the last part, the stopper? So even though you use broccoli, because, with broccoli, you might still have, like, if you don't have something to hold everything down, you'll
Mhm.
probably have them floating up, right? And it won't really be, so, um, you'll want to be creative in your imagination to make sure that you have some kind of full stopper to
Mhm.
weigh down the vegetables to keep them from rising. Because if the vegetables rise too much to the top and they hit the air, that's not good. Because if they
Uh-huh.
hit the air, it molds.
Oh.
So sometimes when things spoil,
Mm-hmm.
it's because air, like botulinum, it's because air got exposed. And so for this one, this is anaerobic. So this is intentionally without air. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to ferment. And so it's going to be fermenting without wild yeast. This is going to be only beneficial probiotics. And
Yes.
so to your question about, oh man, I have a lot in my mind.
Other
Can
other
you repeat me?
vegetables.
Oh, yes, the other vegetables. I would say yes, but mix it. Mix it with cabbage just because you want that stopper. Or you could do the stopper with kale. You can do the stopper with collard greens. Something
Mhm.
flat, something that you can roll up.
Okay, okay.
Any more questions?
No, and then when it's ready to eat, how much can I eat in a day?
As much as you like. It is super nutritious.
Mhm.
So I normally what I do is I try to have at least 1 tablespoon per meal.
Okay, okay.
So, for instance, right now that I'm doing the fasting protocol, I only have dinner. And so at dinner, I might not mix it with a salad. What I'll probably do is I'll just like have a spoonful of it. But that's just like, that's because I've gotten so into this whole routine. I've created a
All right.
routine for myself. But I always make sure, especially when I eat food that's not very healthy, like let's say that's out of my routine,
Uh-huh.
especially when I eat something like sweet or let's say like high carbohydrates, I
Mm-hmm.
especially have extra probiotics. Why is that? Because I don't want the extra sugar in my body, because I don't want it to create unnecessary issues in my body. And
Okay.
so I'll have extra probiotics so that they can go in and eat the extra sugars. And they can like it's homeostasis. We want homeostasis. So things are not necessarily too bad or too good. It's when we have loss of equilibrium.
Okay.
Feasts are important for us. Holidays in the Bible, we have feast days. Like technically, Sabbath is a feast day, right?
Yep.
And so feasting is okay. The challenge is you shouldn't be feasting every day. It's supposed to be a special occasion.
Correct.
It's a holiday thing, right? And so in the Bible, like for instance, like there were parts of the Bible that talk about how to prepare the meat for the Jews, and
Mm-hmm.
they were encouraged to eat it with bitter herbs. And still to this day, Jews, during high holidays, especially like during Purim with Esther, um, they'll eat the meat with a lot of herbs. But some Jews have forgotten why that is, and that's because high fat, high protein, things like that are very heavy, they need something very, very bitter to break down, because the bitter functions similar to your gallbladder that releases the bile that is
Mm-hmm.
bitter, that helps break down fats. You see how intelligent, even in the Bible, like God didn't say, hey, when you eat your meat, when you eat it with herbs, you're fulfilling the function of the gallbladder, which gives you that bitterness to be able to consume fat. No, they didn't tell you all that science. They just told you the principle. But we understand because of science why that principle works. And the
Correct.
principle is you need to eat high fats with something really bitter, because that way you can actually digest it, like assimilate it, process it.
All right. Thank you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Well, I hope you have a wonderful evening and I hope you enjoy your cultured vegetables next week. I'm going to stop the recording.
Mhm.